Good afternoon. It is my video time to say my prayers to Richard, to talk to him. I do this through videos that I just really enjoy talking about him, and it's my way with connecting with him. And I wish that I had just been able to catch on video what just now happened. There was a whole flock of these beautiful black birds, and I mean a whole bunch of them. Must have been like 60 of them or so, and they just came out of nowhere, and they started flying and making their little blackbird sounds, calling out to one another, and they all flew up in the sky, and it was such a beautiful sight because they were flying up against the half moon. Gosh, you can't see the half moon. Maybe I can do a close-up and see it. Nah, you can't see it. Well, there's a half moon right there in the sky, and they were flying up across the sky with a pale half moon, and suddenly they all just came right above me and landed on these eucalyptus branches. All of them, they all came and they landed right above me on these eucalyptus branches. And I said hello to them. I was saying, "Hi, babies, hi." And I said, "Did Richard send you?" And they were all there just right above me. And then Schmickles stood up, and that was it. They all flew off as soon as Schmickles came up, and I don't know. I guess Schmickles kind of, gave them a little scare or something, because then they all flew off somewhere over those willow trees, and they're gone. It's just totally quiet now. I don't even know where they went. They just flew off over at those willows. It was like it was just a beautiful thing that just happened. So, I was going to tell you about the rest of that story with the sailboat. It was a really nice, I wouldn't say it was, I don't know if you would call it a yacht, but it had really cool, underneath it had everything. Like if you were going to sail for a long distance, it had like 4 beds, table, kitchen, bathroom. It had the whole works in it underneath. And we had fun with that sailboat. We used to take it out when we were living in Mandalay Bay, and we would take it out for short little sails. And here's another thing that I need to tell about my beautiful beloved Richard. He knew all about sailing, and it goes back with his father, Poppy. Poppy had the most magnificent yacht. Oh, I mean, this was like $1 million yacht back many years ago. It was like worth all beautiful wood, and it belonged to, I can't remember now, Richard told me, but it belonged to some really wealthy prince or something from I don't know what country. But it was like a really extraordinary yacht. And Richard learned a lot from his father. There were problems in that relationship. I'm not going to go into that, but his father was also a genius. His father was an extraordinary businessman, and his father knew how to uh, he knew how to buy things that were so valuable. I mean, just extraordinary, real estate. One of the things that really hurt Richard's feelings going back to his boyhood was Poppy had bought, like, I don't know, this ranch up north, and it went on for miles and miles and miles. It was near the redwood trees, near the coast, probably worth millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars right now. um, but Poppy really, he knew how to find things and get them on the cheap. I mean, just somehow he just knew how to buy really valuable things, and he would be able to talk to people and get them down to, uh, a price that was just unbelievable. He was a master at talking, and a master salesman and a master businessman. And Richard did learn a lot from his father in that respect. But when he was a boy, that was his most favorite thing, to go up to that ranch up north. And he loved horses, and he had his own horse. I you know he I can I stop and stall a little bit, because when I say he had his own horse, because he not only had the horse to ride up on the ranch, but he had a horse in Encino back when their parents had the home in Encino. And he was telling me back then, and you're talking about the 1940s and the 1950s, Encino was all like this. It was all country. It was just a little country town. It's hard to believe, but it was. And he told me how he had a horse in Encino when they lived in that home, and he would ride his horse to a little market and, get things for his mom. And God bless Moppy and Poppy. I think about them a lot now that Richard has uh, left me, and he's with them. I know he is. Um, but he had a just a very happy childhood in that respect, that he had his own horse. I mean, my gosh, when I was a young girl, my girlfriends and I used to play horse. By that I mean we used to just pretend that um, we had horses, but Richard had the real thing, and he had a horse in Encino. It was a Palomino, I think, and he loved that horse. And he had his dog Laddie. I know he's with them now, because our pets join us in the afterlife. Um, but he had the horse, and every summer, when school would be let out, he was able to go up to the ranch with his parents, and he would ride that horse for miles and miles. I mean, what Poppy owned it wasn't just, 80 acres or 100 acres. It went on for miles and miles. That's how much land it was, all along the coast in a beautiful forest. And Richard he just loved it. And that was the beginning of his dream of wanting to get a horse ranch again, because it goes back to his boyhood on how much he loved this ranch that Poppy owned, and found and got for, I mean, miles and miles. And Poppy somehow swinged it without having to pay. From what I remember Richard telling me, you didn't have to pay very much for it, because Poppy was a master at getting things at a very, if to say at the least, reasonable price. Um, And that's putting it at the least. I mean, just like a miracle price. He was just a master of being able to find something that was really very valuable, and working it through, um, and making it happen. And Richard learned a lot, as I said, from his father in that respect. His father used to take him to business meetings when he was just a very young boy. And Richard told me that Poppy would bring him not just for Richard to learn, but Poppy knew from a very young age with Richard that Richard knew how to see through people and know whether something was not right or something that was right. And I remember Richard saying that Poppy relied on his opinion, on his observations. And I'm talking about when he was just a boy. And he would take him to these meetings, and then Poppy would ask him, well, what do you think about this, or what do you think about that? And Richard would tell him, you know, what he thought. And so Richard had this training going all the way back, from Poppy, learning about business deals. And in any event, Poppy had this beautiful land up north. It was near, just above Santa Cruz, in the redwoods, which, I told Richard, oh, don't tell me this, because that was what I always loved up in the redwoods. That was my thing. When I was a teenager going to college, I was about 19 at the time, and I remember I went up to this place called Sea Ranch with a friend, and it's still like a retirement little section. It's not very developed or anything. It's near the redwoods on the coast, about, I would say, maybe about 100 miles north of San Francisco. And I remember just falling in love with it. It was just the most beautiful thing to be on the cliffs looking down at the Pacific Ocean, and then the redwoods that I loved. I mean, I've always been in love with trees, and that's a common motif in my poems, and even my drawings and my sketches. I just love trees. And so I said, don't tell me that, about Poppy selling it, because, oh my God, But yeah, I'm already giving you a hint of what happened. So Poppy was great at finding valuable things and buying them at miracle prices through his salesmanship master abilities. But the problem was that Richard told me, and Richard learned from Poppy's mistakes. Poppy would get these things, and then he would want to get just a fast buck, and he always just sold, buy it and then sell it, buy it and sell, so he could get, the money, right away, and Richard said one day he found out, he was ready to pack everything up and go up to the ranch. I mean, this is really sad when you think about it. He says, I was all excited. It was summer. I was ready to go up to the ranch. And his father said to him, we don't have it anymore. I sold it. And that broke Richard's heart. I mean, it just broke his heart. He was a young boy, and it was devastating to him that his father sold that land with the redwood trees, and how he used to ride the horse, and it was something he always looked forward to every summer. And I don't know how long Poppy kept it, but apparently it wasn't for too long. And So I think that always stayed with Richard. It always stayed with him that I want to get a horse ranch again, because he remembered, how much he loved that as a boy. So, okay, I do this. I go off on deviations, but it's kind of a continuation of the background of how he bought this land, because that's the backstory of why he had this vision and this dream of one day um, getting away from the city and getting back into nature and getting back to wanting to find his dream, his horse ranch. And he made it happen. He made it happen. Because here it is right in front of us. And we had at one time 24 horses here. But as the years went by, they ended up going to horse heaven. So now we're down to just 3. And but I wanted to just tell the story. Schmickles, you leave that alone. So I deviated a little bit for a little background story about how this dream was always playing in the back of his mind, even when he was a lawyer, and he knew that one day he would leave that life and start another life. And he did. He was a very, very successful lawyer. Everybody thought he was nuts. His parents went crazy when he told them, I'm getting out. I'm getting out. I can't take it anymore. And it was something. His parents were really proud of him being this successful lawyer, and it was like, no, what are you doing? You work so hard to be a lawyer, and you have this successful, law office with clients, but it got to be too much for him. As I said in a previous video, it got to be too much for him. It was, he's carrying too many cases, and it was just too much. So he had this dream, and he ended up getting this land, and it had a lot to do with the ranch that he loved as a boy. And so telling that story, now going back to the sailboat, finishing the sailboat story. So this yacht, Poppy had this beautiful yacht, just gorgeous. It's the kind of yacht that only someone like Jeff Bezos would own. That's how it was, a luxurious all wood, just huge. It was like over 100 feet yacht, 100-foot yacht. And I just saw pictures of it because that's another thing that Poppy sold. So I never got to really see it up front, but I saw pictures of it, and it's an amazing, gorgeous yacht. So Richard learned how to sail from a young age, because he used to go on that yacht with Poppy. And so then, that he ended up getting a yacht also. This is before I met him. And it was a smaller yacht, but it was all handcrafted, all wood, just another, not as big as Poppy's. It was more like around 30 foot, but it had the same quality as Poppy's, all wood. Just I saw pictures of it. It was that thing just slid through the waves. You could just tell. It was a beautiful, highly crafted yacht that some famous German yacht builder built it. I don't know the whole history of it. It's too bad that Richard couldn't be here to tell you the whole history of it, because he could tell you every detail about it. But it was before I met him, and then he sold that because he said it required, perpetual maintenance, and it got to be very expensive. So he sold that, and then when we moved to the Mandalay Bay condo, where we could have a boat right there, in the back you had a dock, and you could have a boat, and just like a car garage, where you get in the car, and in the same way, right in the back, you could just get in your boat and sail off, right off from your home. And so this boat, we were bringing it up from where he bought it, from down south, and we were going through Malibu, and I told you about how the water was just pitch black, and I saw all these sharks, and he saw them too. But then we were just cruising along, and he put it on autopilot, and he said, I'm just gonna take a nap. It's on autopilot, and wake me up if anything happens. He would never guess what would have happened, like, because he had this joke about, don't wake me up if it's something insignificant, like, oh, there's something on here on the deck that needs to be cleaned, or something, something dumb, and he said, just only wake me up if it's something really urgent. Because I guess he was pretty tired, I don't know. But so he was down below, and it was nice. I mean, it was set up for 4 beds. It had a kitchen, a bathroom, the whole works. And so he's down there sleeping, and all of a sudden, I look down on the floor down below, and I see water coming in, and it's rising. And that's when I thought, okay, he wanted me to wake him up on something urgent. This looks pretty urgent. So I said, Richard, there's water coming in. I think we're sinking. And so he wakes up and sees the water coming in, and he doesn't know where it's coming from. And this is a brand new boat that he bought, brand new. So there's a hawk flying around, beautiful hawk. See if you can see it. I don't know. Oh, I can't catch it. Anyway, so the water's coming up, and he thinks there's something wrong, that something happened with this boat. There's, water coming in, and so we had to call the Coast Guard, and the Coast Guard hooks us up. The Coast Guard does come, and it's with, it's a motorboat, and the fumes are like pretty heavy. So, but the Coast Guard comes, hooks up the boat, and I had to stay in the back. Somebody had to stay on the boat, and somebody had to be on the Coast Guard boat. And Richard went on the Coast Guard boat, and I stayed on the yacht. And man, I was smelling those damn fumes all the way up to Oxnard. It was like, oh, I feel nauseated. And not only that, but the boat was rocking back and forth. I mean, it's amazing I didn't just vomit. But we finally got back to Oxnard, and it turns out that a plug in the sink in the bathroom, I think it was the plug maybe in the shower or the sink, it must have been the shower, and it wasn't plugged in or something, and that's where the water was coming in. So it wasn't like there was a problem with the boat. It was that the damn stupid plug wasn't in, and it was coming up through the bathroom, and water was leaking through the bathroom. Oh, but it didn't ruin the boat. It got cleaned up. I mean, that's what's nice about a boat. You know, they're made for things like that. They're weatherproof. They're waterproof, and it got cleaned up pretty nicely. And you know, we used to once we had the boat up there, then you know, then we used to take it out on short trips out in Oxnard, and uh, it was fun. It was that was a really fun time, and I bring it up because uh, these are memories that I want to keep in my mind and in my heart of the things that Richard and I did together, and I am just saying this because uh, when you say, oh, you've been together for 48 years, it sounds like, oh, okay, you've just been living together for 48 years. No, there's hundreds and hundreds of memories that go with that. Hundreds of memories of sharing your life together, and you know, doing things together and having adventures and having things happen that are crazy sometimes, but it's all part of the adventure. And in the end, it's you look back on it and you kind of laugh at it. And we used to laugh about that whole thing, especially when the boat was sinking, when we're going through this black water before we hit, you know, it was before Malibu, this black water with these sharks going through, and the water's coming up in the boat. And but that's the way our lives were with me and Richard. It was always like there was always something we were doing that was an adventure. So many memories that I have, that things that we used to do together, trips that we used to take, whether it was, we used to take trips up to Canada, and there were stories, lots of stories about that, crazy things that would happen, all part of the adventure of our lives together. So I just wanted to share that story with you all, and hope you enjoyed it. Have a beautiful day. Bye bye.